Welcome back to another episode of Mastering Master Mode. We start this episode off by trying to head down to our jungle temple, where I can grab some of the buffing items that I left behind, like the bass statues and heart lanterns. However, on the way down, I spot a Plantera bulb, and I would never pass up an opportunity to take on Plantera. It's really such an easy boss that there's no reason for me to pass an opportunity to take it on, as it'll give me money and items to sell for more money, which is good because I keep running out as I try to reforge my items. The Goblin Tinkerer is a thief. He steals all my money trying to reforge, so the more bosses I can take out and get a bunch of money from, the better. The first Plantera goes down pretty easily, though a bit slowly since I am using a bunch of different weapons rather than just the Heat Ray or maybe the Shadow Beam Staff, which are proven to be some of the better weapons against it. But I wanted to try out a few new weapons that I got, like the Spirit Flame and the Inferno Fork, just to see how they do against Plantera. The Spirit Flame does good damage, but it is rather slow and single target damage, so it is kind of hard to hit Plantera in its second phase, and the Inferno Fork's projectile is just a bit too slow to accurately and reliably hit Plantera, as it moves rather quickly, especially in its second phase. While bringing the first Plantera down from where I found its bulb, I actually pass a second Plantera bulb, so I figure I might as well take on a second Plantera. The second Plantera goes down much quicker than the first since I decided to use better weapons like the Heat Ray. In the middle of fighting those two Planteras, I do end up spotting a third Plantera bulb off to the left near the Queen Bee's hive, which means I get to fight a third Plantera, and it's actually insane that I found 3 Plantera bulbs within a very small radius of my arena. Normally you have to travel across the whole jungle to find them and bring it all the way back to the arena, but luckily for me, they happen to spawn right next to my arena. With those Planteras down, I get to my jungle temple, grab my buffing stations, and head over to the ocean biome so that I can start to take on the Duke Fishron boss. Duke Fishron is an optional boss in the game, and it's one of my worst boss fights. This is because of the fact that it's optional, so I don't actually fight Duke Fishron most of the time I play through the game. I don't fight Duke Fishron because it's an optional boss fight, and it's really hard, but it's a catch-22 because it's really hard because I don't fight Duke Fishron. The hardest part about Duke Fishron is it's very fast. It has some sort of dashing attack in all of its phases, and can easily catch up to you regardless of your speed. My best bet at getting away from Duke Fishron is either falling or flying, since my vertical movement speed is actually quite a bit faster than my horizontal movement speed. When I'm moving horizontally, I need to use my mount, as it gives me a huge boost in speed, but it does take a little bit of time to get up to that top speed. Duke Fishron's first phase consists of shooting bubbles and sharks, as well as Sharknadoes, which deal a bunch of damage, and in between those attacks, it uses a dashing attack to do some contact damage. Its second phase does all of the same things, but a lot faster, and once it reaches its third phase, the screen gets very dark, and it starts to teleport around the screen, doing only dash attacks rather than all of its ranged attacks as well, and these attacks are much faster and harder to predict since it is teleporting around. In terms of weapons, I'm using the Heat Ray, since Duke Fishron is a single target, so I don't need to worry about using a piercing weapon to hit multiple segments or multiple enemies at once, and the Heat Ray is definitely my most powerful weapon at this point. The biggest issue with the Heat Ray is it doesn't have any kind of homing properties, and the ray that it shoots is very thin, meaning it is actually pretty easy to miss Duke Fishron, especially since I'm trying to stay pretty far away from it, and it ends up being off the screen sometimes. The pros definitely outweigh the cons in this situation though, since I need to be doing as much damage as possible, since the healing that I get is based on a percentage of the damage that I deal, so the higher damage output, the more healing I can get. I don't think the Heat Ray is the best weapon for the third phase, since it does the teleporting and I don't have any kind of homing to track it down, but for right now, it's the best I've got. I make it to phase 3, but the teleporting dash attacks confuse the heck out of me, and it ends up taking me out after I'd gotten it all the way down to under 10,000 health. I'm pretty sure I could beat Duke Fishron in just a few attempts. My second attempt goes rather poorly. I never buff, which is a huge mistake in most boss fights, and this time I'm trying out the Spectre Mask instead of the Spectre Hood. I think maybe the extra DPS can help me win this fight if I take it out fast enough, but it ends up costing me because I need to heal, and I never have the opportunity since I don't have the hood on. I do end up dealing a lot of damage a lot faster, but it came at the cost of the healing, and when I tried to switch on the hood, for some reason my game froze. I thought I could have auto pause on, which means the game will stop while I'm in my inventory, and be able to switch from the mask to the hood, but it seems like that's not the case, and I really need to either have the hood on or the mask or turn off auto pause so that I can switch between the two faster. With that being said, Duke Fishron takes me out after getting 4 or 5 hits in a row on me without me being able to dodge any of them. Thankfully, I do remember to buff on my third attempt, and I did decide to use the Spectre Hood for that extra healing, since I realized in the last one that I will end up needing it at some point. Duke Fishron is just too fast for my movement speed to be able to dodge all of its attacks. I'm gonna take some hits, so I need to heal as much as possible. With the Spectre Hood on, I'm actually able to stay up around full health for a good majority of this fight. I wish I had a weapon that had homing projectiles, since I feel like the biggest issue that I'm having with this boss fight is the fact that I miss a lot of shots. I feel like if I hit all of the shots that I was missing, I would definitely have taken out Duke Fishron already. This is of course a skill issue, but if I had homing projectiles, it would definitely resolve that skill issue. As it goes into phase 2, since I was at full health, I decided to switch into my Spectre Mask to deal a bit of extra damage as it was charging into its second phase. Once I take a few hits, I switch back to the Spectre Hood, and as you can see, it does seem to be working with the auto pause on to be able to switch between the hood and the mask. I'm not sure why my game totally froze up on that last attempt, but regardless, this attempt is it. Now that I know I can switch between the masks, I should be golden. Of course, knowing that I can switch between the masks and actually switching between the masks is two completely different things. I don't ever actually try and switch back to the mask, mostly because I feel that I'm gonna need the healing, and switching between the two masks would be too much of a distraction, even though I can pause the game doing it. I do a good job of staying up at full health all the way until phase 3. Once phase 3 starts, the teleporting that Duke Fishron does makes it very hard to actually hit Duke Fishron, and if I can't hit Duke Fishron, I can't heal up, since the healing is based on damage that I deal. With that in mind, the massive amount of damage that Duke Fishron can deal with every single hit is way too much for me to handle, and it takes me out with just about 10,000 health again. That was unfortunately my last attempt for this episode, since I need to gather more truffle worms, which is the summoning item for Duke Fishron. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Mastering Master Mode, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment down below, and subscribe for more DanSquared action. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week for more Mastering Master Mode.